After a controversial decision at the UFC 282 that saw Paddy Pimblett win by unanimous decision, one of the MMA judges at the center of the Pimblett controversy, Doug Crosby, has broken the silence on the UFC scoring debacle. So what did he have to say? Also, the video will talk about how the MMA world arrived at one of the worst decisions in UFC history. Stay tuned. Starting us off, Paddy Pimblett vs. Jared Gordon official scorecard on the UFC 282 controversy. After Paddy Pimblett's victory against Jared Gordon at UFC 282, the terms robbed and robbery were popular on Twitter on Saturday night. In the co-main event at T-Mobile Arena, Pimblett and Gordon fought for the entire 15 minutes. The baddie won unanimously with scores of 29-28 overall. The outcome surprised many people on social media, and Gordon claimed he had been robbed. At UFC 282, Paddy Pimblett defeated Jared Gordon by unanimous decision to maintain his winning record inside the cage. So how did the fight go? Early on, Gordon caught Pimblett with two precise hooks and a right hand. Pimblett continued to advance with whipping leg kicks and his power punches, even though his hands were too low to protect against much effectively. Both lightweights traded blows back and forth in the second round, but it appeared like Pimblett could be gaining momentum. Gordon used his wrestling skills in the third round to pin Paddy against the cage. Although the Englishman didn't get much offense in, Gordon maintained control and stopped any attacks from him. Pimblett was awarded a unanimous decision victory by the judges when they had finished scoring the bout. Given Gordon's powerful blows in the first round and his cage control in the third, some people were surprised by the decision. As for the first two rounds, Pimblett thought he had won them legitimately, but you decide. Did Pimblett perform well enough to secure the victory? 23 out of the 24 MMA media sites gave Gordon the win, with 11 awarding the American all three rounds. However, all three judges gave Pimblett 2 rounds for a unanimous 29-28 decision. In the UFC 282 co-main event, the judges Doug Crosby, Chris Lee, and Ron McCarthy all agreed on the score, but not on the rounds won by each contender. McCarthy and Crosby awarded Pimblett rounds 2 and 3 and Pimblett round 1, whereas Lee awarded Pimblett rounds 1 and 2. Pimblett won his 4th UFC fight in a row, while Gordon returned to the losing side after defeating Leonardo Santos in his last fight. Next, Jared Gordon says that he got robbed, and everyone knows it, in response to the contentious Paddy Pimblett defeat at UFC 282. After losing to Paddy Pimblett by controversial unanimous decision on Saturday, December 10th, 2022 at UFC 282, which was held at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, Jared Gordon has responded. The judges at the ringside had some work to do in Sin City after 10 consecutive victories, and it wasn't pretty at all. The whole mixed martial arts MMA community freaked out when Flash lost a strange unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28 against Pimblett in the pay-per-view PPV co-main event of the evening. Gordon responded to the contentious decision through social media many hours after the fight, expressing what everyone else believed except Pimblett and his team. Gordon tweeted that he got robbed and everyone knows it. He also added that while he can cry over it, he has come back from the worst and God's plan is the best, so he knows something big will come from it. Gordon has alternated victories and defeats in his previous 4 fights after switching to lightweight, unable to secure the greatest triumph of his career and stop the baddie hype train. Pimblett doubled down and defended the contentious judgment in his post-fight press conference. Next up, the controversial MMA judge at the center of the Paddy Pimblett issue speaks out about the UFC scoring scandal. The world of combat sports has always wanted to speak with Doug Crosby after the scorecard controversy. Last weekend, Paddy Pimblett vs. Jared Gordon at UFC 282 in Las Vegas and Danny Sabatello vs. Rafion Stotts at Bellator 289 in Uncasville's main event both drew criticism for the longtime MMA judges' contentious scorecards. During the You're Welcome podcast, Crosby said that judges had to give a numerical value to fights they had just witnessed, and on average they get around 15 seconds to turn that score in. He added that judges also have roughly 10 seconds to decide who won a round and who lost a match if the 5 seconds for the time it takes to write the score are subtracted from the 15 seconds. On December 9th, Crosby recorded the first 50-45 scorecard for a loser in the MMADecisions.com database, favoring Sabatello 50-45 in Sabatello Stotts 10-9 x5. The event was won by Supa in a split decision by fellow judges Eric Colin and Brian Miner, who gave Stotts a 48-47 score. According to Crosby, the most common criticism of the scorecard scandal over the previous 15 years, which he would not characterize as a complaint but rather as a statement or a concern, has been that successful grappling is not given enough enough weight in the scoring criteria. He also said that the scoring methodology has recently been amended and revised so that good striking and effective grappling are regarded as equal. He also remarked that if anyone viewed his scores through this newly established mental lens and assumed that effective grappling is equivalent to effective hitting, the results might be simpler to comprehend. The Pimblett fight was scored 29-28 in favor of the baddie the next night, even though 23 of the 24 media sites broadcasting UFC 282 results and play-by-play gave the match to Gordon. Crosby, who also received criticism for officiating two special MMA events on opposite sides of the nation within 24 hours, had also scored the battle in Gordon's favor. Crosby also mentioned that the criteria must be read and understood, and he didn't know who had read them. But he remarked that he knows that the majority of fighters he speaks with are clever, eloquent, and brave, and he admires them all for better or worse. And that motivates him to move forward, not for what's best for the coaches or the media, but for the fighters. He also added he would welcome private conversations with the fighters. Finally, on how the MMA world arrived at one of the worst decisions in UFC history, there are several ways in which an MMA match might conclude. A clean knockout, technical knockout, or cunning submission is the most popular and entertaining. On the other hand, if a bout cannot be completed in the allotted time, the winner will be chosen by a panel of 3 judges. How do MMA judges award points? In summary, the 10-point must system is used in most MMA organizations. The method was created for boxing and is based on the notion that each round of a fight should be scored separately, with the winner earning 10 points and the loser receiving 9 points or fewer, depending on the margin of victory. Effective hitting, grappling, aggressive output, and if necessary, octagon control and positioning are among the numerous factors considered when grading rounds. If a bout goes the distance, the winner is determined by 3 judges submitting their round-by-round scorecards. The MMA 10-point must system, however, has a flaw. The system is viewed as being seriously broken and inconsistent both inside the MMA community and beyond. Most of the time, fighting is transparent and a strong performance doesn't usually distinguish the crowd. However, the system only becomes problematic when a fight is quite close. Fighting will always be a matter of opinion whether or not some judges concur. While one judge may view grappling without causing harm as adequate ground control, another may disagree. There will frequently be differences between what you and I think is effective and can win rounds, as judges often haven't taken a blow to the face. Many supporters and detractors argue that judges ought to have been fighters in the past. Additionally, judges will never confess that they are frequently influenced by the audience's responses or the popularity of a specific fighter, even though this is never appropriate. One of the best instances of this was on full display during the weekend at UFC 282, which featured the light heavyweight title bout between Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz in Las Vegas. Ariel Helwani called it one of the worst decisions in UFC history, which caused criticism. Starting with the co-main event, Paddy Pimblett, 23-0, won a unanimous decision against Jared Gordon, 19-6-0. Pimblett, the UFC's biggest cash cow and appeared to be a lock to beat Jared Gordon, who hasn't submitted an opponent in half a decade, was handed this match to boost the anticipation. Pimblett did everything but run over Gordon, which is unfortunate for UFC President Dana White. Pimblett was on the losing end of a dominant performance and was outstruck and outgrappled throughout the 3 rounds. He showed significant weakness during the remainder of the fight, which Gordon was able to take advantage of. It was a commanding performance, but a difficult one for Dana White, who couldn't even stand to face the judges as Bruce Buffer read the scorecards. Paddy Pimblett, dubbed everyone's favorite boxer, won the bout 29-28, much to Dana White's relief, according to all 3 judges. The community was incensed when 24 of 25 respected MMA journalists scored the bout for Gordon, including commentators Joe Rogan and UFC Hall of Famer Daniel Cormier, who thought Gordon accomplished enough to receive his victory bonus. Extreme conspiracy theorists yelled about corruption, but many more raved about ineffective judgment, particularly about Douglas Crosby, who has constantly submitted low scores for years. He judged a high-stakes Bellator bout the evening before UFC 282 and gave the losing opponent a perfect score in each round. Then he took a flight to Vegas to oversee the Pimblett fight. How did the commission permit this? So is the UFC losing credibility as a result of these decisions? Despite its continued popularity, the UFC has has faced criticism and lost trust among some of its fighters due to a series of contentious scorecards. Petr Yan, a former bantamweight champion, and Magomed Ankalaev, a challenger for the light heavyweight belt, have both openly declared that they might not compete for the organization again because of their displeasure with the judging method. Despite this, the UFC has not experienced a significant decline in viewership. Instead, it has primarily experienced criticism and outrage on social media. The problems and inconsistencies in MMA judging have generally reduced confidence among competitors. They are sometimes pressured to try for finishes in their fights to avoid having their victory determined at the judge's discretion. A comprehensive examination and investigation are required to identify possible adjustments that may be made to the system to enhance its fairness and accuracy. The sport will only continue to suffer from the problem of inconsistent judges, which damages the credibility of its judgments. So that's it, my friends. While Crosby has come out to defend his scorecard based on the new UFC rules, do you think Pimblett should have been awarded the victory? Also, is the UFC 10-point system flawed? Let's hear your comments in the section below. Please remember to subscribe, and thank you for watching.